This is the On the Pony Express podcast, part of the On3 network. Check out all the SMU coverage you need at ontheponyexpress.com. Now, here's your host, Billy Embody. 1, 2, 3, let me go.
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. I'm Billy Embody. Thanks for listening as always. Guys, big game for SMU at Memphis, 11 a.m. Central on ESPN2 this week. But we've got to first lead off with some of the final thoughts from that game over North Texas as SMU is able to come away with the win. For me, looking back on that game, I'm really impressed with how the defense circled the wagons. I haven't seen many times in SMU's history, and I asked Rhett Lashley about this after the game, that type of a dominant half from an SMU team just overall. But I do feel like it was kind of rooted in the defense's turnaround, and they allowed 14 points in the first half. It was 17-14. It was a ball game, and the defense did not play as, in my opinion, poorly as some would think, with the score being what it was. They were an offsides away from getting off the field and forcing a field goal try, which makes it would have been 17-10 at the half if everything kind of remains the same. But instead, they jump offside on the field goal. North Texas goes for it. There was a lot that they had to clean up. But from what we've seen in that for that defense throughout the season, they weren't playing up to their standard again, coming off of a Rice game where SMU had moments where they certainly weren't tackling well. They weren't able to get off the field, and special teams were a mess and things like that. But in the second half, that defensive effort I thought was awesome. And what SMU was able to put together by kind of tweaking some of their coverage plans really frustrated North Texas. SMU mixed them up a little bit more, went a little bit more man, mixed some zones, things like that, to fix some of the issues in terms of receivers kind of running, quite frankly, open. I mean, we saw a coverage bust from SMU that was I believe, 54-yard gain. And then there were some other great throws by Chandler Rogers and the North Texas receivers making plays. And then on the offensive side, SMU just absolutely whipped North Texas's defensive line up front. I felt like that was one of the more dominant performances I've seen from an offensive line perspective since I've been covering the team. Granted, the opponent is what it is in terms of being the worst defense in the country, and SMU was able to get over the 300-yard mark. But what they were able to do in that game was really, really impressive to me. And so I don't think it should be lost on people that SMU, against a team that had played the class of the AAC in terms of the other three top four teams to one-score games each of the last 3 weeks, SMU came out in the second half and opened up a 45-14 lead, and then North Texas scores late to make it 45-21. That is why you're seeing SMU jump up in terms of respect within the conference and overall people saying, okay, now SMU can take that and, be the New Year's Six favorite. They can be the favorite to win the American. They can be the favorite to beat Tulane or UTSA, whoever comes out of that side of things, if they get past Memphis this weekend. And SMU will have to exercise a demon on Saturday at 11 a.m. They haven't won up at the Liberty Bowl in years now. We've known SMU and Memphis to play some great football games over the years, but they have not gone SMU's way up there in Memphis. This week, they've got to win at Memphis to really obviously control their own destiny in the AAC because they don't play Tulane. They don't play UTSA. Those two teams face each other next week. Memphis already lost to Tulane, and SMU is going to have to go up to Memphis and get a win. And kind of touching on some injuries before we get into kind of a full kind of preview of that and kind of how things stand going into it. I think SMU is going to be without their right tackle, Hiron White. He was at practice observing on Tuesday and Wednesday, and Rhett Lashley, basically said he's probably going to be out, and then Preston Stone said he'll be missed and things like that. So it doesn't look good for the big right tackle out of DeSoto, which is really tough. And I wouldn't sit here and say that Hiron has been a top 3 offensive lineman for SMU. I think he's been probably their 4th best lineman, right there with Logan Parr. But he's big, he's physical, he's a veteran, and you hate to see that for him. And SMU has to kind of rotate among the guard spots, guys like Ja'Kai Clark, Ben Sparks, Cam Irving, a bunch of different options along with Logan Parr if Justin Osborne's going to be your right tackle. This week, good thing is you are going to have PJ Williams to step in and play at times if needed. So that is important. He's out of the concussion protocol. He was going to be, probably your right tackle against North Texas. If I'm just kind of guessing how the flow of the game would have continued if he didn't have that concussion. But instead, it was Justin Osborne kicking out the right tackle, and boy, he did a great job for SMU. And they're going to have to figure out, probably some. Now that Memphis will have had like a full week to scout this, maybe they'll be faced with some adversity up front, but they're going to have to find a way to produce still, because this offense is going to have to keep pace with a Memphis offense that honestly probably presents the most issues for SMU since they played Oklahoma. Just looking at their running back, Blake Watson, and what he can do reminds me a little bit of some of the OU backs that they had, just in terms of production and ability to also catch the football. That was something that OU hurt SMU with up there in Norman. And so Seth Hennigan has also done a really nice job against SMU throughout his career. He's a little banged up. He was hurt against Charlotte, but he's going to play. He's going to be in this ball game for the Tigers, looking to, once again at Memphis, beat his, hometown team. He's a Denton Ryan kid, his coach's son, and he's going to try to beat the Mustangs once again at the Liberty Bowl. And he is one of the best quarterbacks in the American. And for Preston Stone, this is an opportunity for him to really stake his claim to being one of the best quarterbacks in the conference, just from a, skins on the wall. You can kind of go into different games and feel really good about yourself. Granted, SMU has had success with Preston under center, and Preston is coming off a strong showing against North Texas. I thought he was terrific, considering he didn't practice all week. But this is your first game since Oklahoma, as the season has kind of played out, that you're facing a team above 500. I don't think SMU's schedule, I could be wrong, but I don't believe they've played a team that has been above 500 since Oklahoma. And so this is a huge test, and they're going to face a defense that is not very good statistically, 104th in the country. And I understand why SMU is hovering around a 9-point favorite against Memphis this week. And it's probably because of that defense. SMU has been able to play well against poor defenses. Charlotte had its fourth or fifth string running back go off for about 200 yards last week. I mean, he had one career carry going into the game. That's the type of defense you are going into the Liberty Bowl to face. At the same time, Seth Hennigan and what he's been able to do with this offense, and you couple him with Blake Watson, who's nearing 1,000 yards on the ground, you're going to have to play very well defensively, and your offense is going to have to capitalize on opportunities. And again, this is the first time SMU's facing a team that is above 500 since OU. And Seth Hennigan has, been known to find ways to win key games. That's why they're 8-2. That's why they, been able to be in ball games against Tulane and Missouri and teams like that. Now, this is a watered down conference, but ultimately for SMU, and this year has gone fairly similar to what we thought. I thought the second hardest game going into the year would be against East Carolina. And sure enough, I would argue it was. Rice, I did not envision a special teams meltdown. That game should have been a lot more, um, you know, uh, one-sided towards SMU. I mean, the phantom holding call, special teams, that's why they play the games. But we knew going into the season that Memphis would be the hardest game on the schedule. And you look up and they're 8-2. And they, played Tulane really well. They played at Missouri really well. They've got some skins on the wall in that respect. They've beaten Boise State, which is not their usual self, but they're 5-5. They're not a bad football team, but now all that you planned for in terms of your season comes down to one game at the Liberty Bowl and trying to exercise a demon that has been on SMU's back for a decade now. And to do that, Preston Stone is going to have to be at his best. And I do think him having that week off basically against North Texas was not a bad thing. Him getting to rest his arm, him getting to watch, observe, coach a little bit. Those are all really good things. And so SMU is going to need Preston Stone to be at his best and to take advantage of that time off and to come back around now and say, all right, now it's my time to go out and show why I'm that I should be a highly thought of quarterback in this conference, because he has a chance to really stake his claim to that type of a legacy in a way as SMU heads toward the ACC. This is a massive, massive game for him overall. And so SMU is going to have to be ready to go. And that involves SMU getting the best from their quarterback. And so that's why I like SMU in this one. I like them by double digits, but they're going to have to be ready to go overall offensively. So speaking of ready to go, you're going to want to be ready to go to the game on Saturday. And that's why we partnered with GameTime to make your game ticket buying experience the easiest around. GameTime is the fastest growing ticketing app in the country right now. And when you go through the GameTime app, it's so easy. It takes 2 taps just to buy your tickets. You can find last minute tickets. They have flash deals. You see the zone deals. They're easy to find, and you can buy tickets for concerts, games, whatever with the GameTime app. So you can view seats across the venue. If you go in and you look at that flash deal there, click to unlock it. Wow. Okay. $14 each, $120. You're sitting about the 40-yard line. That's pretty good. There's the view from the seat if you're watching it on our YouTube channel. So check out the GameTime app. They've got the ability to hook you up with this super easy ticket buying experience. And for those of you who have struggled with the ticket buying experience, that's why you've got to check out GameTime. And it's the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind. And they're obsessed with finding ways to help you save money. That's why they have the GameTime guarantee, which means you always get the best price. You can use the GameTime guarantee to credit you 110% of the difference if you find tickets in the same section and row for less. So download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code PONY for $20 off your first purchase. PONY, that's the code for $20 off. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. So shout out GameTime for partnering with us at On the Pony Express. And for me, I look at this SMU game against Memphis and how do you stop what Memphis has going offensively? Well, the defensive line is going to have to be key to this. And SMU has its group healthy, ready to go. They're going to be the key to this. And what I mean by that is at various points in terms of watching with the naked eye, this group has not necessarily been at its best in terms of being in the right gaps. And outside of moments in the Rice game, there have been times where opposing teams have been able to run on SMU just a little bit, but I don't think it's been tackling as much. I think it's been pure alignment and kind of angles in terms of those gaps. And so having this defensive line that SMU has be able to create control this front is going to be really, really important. And that's what I'm watching closely for in this one when it comes to SMU's matchup with this Memphis offensive line. This is an offensive line that going into the year was kind of much maligned, wasn't thought of much. Well, they almost have 1,000-yard rusher going into the second to last game. They play Temple next week, so you know he's probably going to get it if he's healthy. And SMU's defensive line has been the strength of this defense, in my opinion. And I'm expecting Charles Woods to play on the back end. I'm expecting Isaiah Wacobia. Brian Massey is somebody I expect to play. Brandon Crosley was not on the depth chart this week, so I do think he could very well redshirt this year and probably make a return to action against someone in the conference championship game. But we'll see. He's going to be available. I'm sure he'll travel, but that's something worth noting there. He was not on the depth chart this week. But having guys like Jordan Miller, Elijah Roberts, Elijah Chapman, Devere Levelston, those are all important pieces for this SMU defense. And they're going to have to find ways to control the line of scrimmage, including Corey Roberson. So we're going to be watching this matchup closely. If SMU can stay in their gaps, play sound, disciplined defense, I expect the Mustangs to get the win. I think they've got a chance against a bad Memphis defense statistically. If they play clean and win the turnover battle, they should be able to run the football. They should be able to make enough plays to top that 40-point mark, which has been, pretty safe bet for the most part for SMU this season, save for a few different games. But I've got SMU winning 42-27, I believe I said on the Walking Strong podcast with Bill. I like that number. I think Memphis has been in a lot of close games lately. They had to fend off Charlotte. They had to fend off, I believe, North Texas. I just had their schedule here. Now, of course, it went away. But Memphis, playing that, 59-50 shootout against South Florida, 45-42 against North Texas, 45-21 against UAB. This is a Memphis team that has to score points to feel safe. And against SMU's defense, I'm just going to bet on them to hold them to a reasonable number. I think if special teams doesn't completely blow it, SMU should be able to control this one and feel pretty good about their stance throughout it. And that's why I like SMU to win 42-27. I think Memphis will be able to score some points. And maybe there's some field position game that kind of goes Memphis's way. Sutton Smith is a good return man. But overall, I like where SMU is. I like the confidence of this team. I like the veteran mentality of it. This is the biggest game, you could argue, in the last decade for SMU in terms of football history. I mean, honestly, if they win this one, I don't know if they are in, but they're pretty much in if you assume you can take care of a Navy football team at home that would come into that one. I believe they're 4-5 on the year. They're not the normal Navy team. Win this one, you're in the AAC championship game. That should kind of be the mentality among SMU fans. The team's got to look at it as, beat Memphis, and that's the game on your schedule. But that's why I like SMU. I think they're going to be able to control the line of scrimmage just enough to win this one 42-27. So with that, we are going to preview the game with Jonah Dylan of the Commercial Appeal. We're going to do that on the other side of this break of the On the Pony Express podcast. So stay tuned for that interview on the other side of this break. Guys, before we go any further, I got to tell you about our friends at HelloFresh, and they are absolutely killing it right now. The holidays are that perfect time to get on board with HelloFresh. A lot of people are going to be in and out of your house. You need some easy meals to make happen during the holiday season. And it's right around the corner. And HelloFresh can take that stress away from making dinner, making lunch, making breakfast for your family or just, you and your own. And they deliver everything you need to cook up a tasty meal right to your door, saving you tons of time. You don't have to go to the store and figure out, all right, am I going to, get this, get that? They already have it portioned out. You don't have to go in and guess kind of, okay, all right, I've got to pick up this seasoning, that, whatever. It's all in the box. And I tell you what, we had for dinner recently the creamy dill pork tenderloin with couscous and green beans. And I tell you what, guys, when the sauce for this couscous and pork tenderloin was out of this world. My wife and I loved it. And again, everything is already portioned out, whether it's the steak or meat that you have in there, whether it's your vegetables, whether it's the salt, the pepper, all those things are already done for you. So it's the perfect way to make meals easy and fun. I mean, I like cooking, but again, it's kind of always that whole let's get all the ingredients together. And then maybe by the end of the week, it's kind of a waste. So HelloFresh's ingredients travel from the farm to your door, so you know they're fresh, and everything arrives, again, pre-portioned, so you can get to cooking right away. And again, my wife and I, we love doing this. She's pregnant right now, so we're also trying to eat healthy, and HelloFresh has healthy options for you if you're trying to go down that route. So be sure to check them out, HelloFresh. And the great part is they're now including breakfast. If you go to hellofresh.com/ponyfree, PONYFREE, and use code ponyfree for free breakfast for life. That is one breakfast item per box while your subscription is active. That's free breakfast for life at hellofresh.com/ponyfree using that code ponyfree. Check out America's #1 meal kit. That's HelloFresh. Our friends over there just do an incredible job. We love them. Great partner of the program. So check them out. HelloFresh.com/ponyfree. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are lucky to be joined by our next guest, Jonah Dylan, who covers the Memphis football program for the Commercial Appeal over there in Memphis, is joining us now on the podcast. Thanks so much for the time, Jonah. And how's everything going over there this season?
Yeah, it's been a wild season, up and down, life or death, pretty much every game for Memphis. So it's definitely been exciting to cover, and it feels like it's all kind of led to this week. So it's very exciting that we're actually here.
And for Memphis, Rhett Lashley has called the program the gold standard, really, of consistency for this conference. And once again, they're right there challenging for an AAC championship game appearance. What is different? What is the same about this version of the Memphis football team and kind of what we've seen in the past when they've been up at the top of the conference?
Yeah, I think this team it's definitely more experienced than they've been in the past couple of years, and you see that with how they've figured out a way to win close games. Last year, that was the biggest problem for this team. 0-4 in games decided by touchdown or fewer, and then this year they're 4-1 so far in those types of games. So that's been the biggest difference. We've seen, especially in the last couple of weeks, some of those shootout type games that fans expected under Mike Norvell, but maybe didn't see all the time under Ryan Silverfield. The past 3 games, especially, have been wild. Obviously, 59-50 against USF. That's about as crazy as it gets. So it's been exciting. It's been up and down. There have been a lot of mistakes. There have been a lot of big time comebacks, and it's been a wild ride.
With Seth Hennigan at the helm, I mean, Memphis is never out of a game. He's been awesome ever since he burst onto the scene there early in his career. Almost led that comeback last year at SMU. What have you seen from him this year, and just how has he continued to take steps in his overall development?
Yeah, well, we've really seen it over the past couple of weeks. He obviously got injured in that South Florida game, and there were questions about if he was going to play against Charlotte last week. He played, he got injured, left the game, came back in the game, and then I thought played even better in the second half once he came back from the injury and kind of led that comeback down the stretch. Memphis was down by 10 points close to the end of the game, came back, forced overtime, won in overtime. I think with Seth Hennigan, it's been people have been expecting him to kind of take the next step going into this season, and they were a little bit frustrated with some of the turnovers earlier in the season, but he had a stretch with 3 games without a turnover, and he's really playing his best football now. I mean, I think the South Florida game before he got injured, I think a lot of people were saying that was actually his best game that he played as a Memphis Tiger. And and he wants to raise his game. He knows obviously this week going up against Preston Stone, another quarterback that people talk about a lot throughout the conference, that means he wants to raise his game and be at that elite level.
He's got two really talented pass catchers in Rock Taylor and Demir Blankumsey. I think I nailed that one, maybe not. But what is the key to this passing attack being as effective as it is this year?
Yeah, the key has been there's just so many different guys that step up. Rock Taylor, I think, like you said, he's kind of that top guy. But other than him, I mean, Demir Blankumsey, yes, good job with the pronunciation. Blake Watson obviously has been a huge key as a running back, but he's been really big in the passing game as well. You've got guys like Kobe Drake, Towski Dove. People just come up with big catches whenever they need to. Anthony Lanfear, the tight end, has been a pretty significant weapon, especially on third downs. And they really just replaced their entire receiving core from last season. They brought in a lot of new guys. Joe Skates was a guy who had that last second touchdown catch against North Texas. So you never really know who's going to be in the middle of it, but somebody has been stepping up pretty consistently throughout the season.
Blake Watson is somebody Memphis has rolled out there this year and has been super productive and almost 1,000 yards now, 6 yards a carry. SMU's defense is the top in the conference, a top 10 defense nationally. They've got a big defensive line. What's the offensive line situation at Memphis? Obviously, they've got to be good to be able to do what they've done for the most part this season. But how do you kind of see that offensive line matching up with SMU's defensive line? Because I feel like that's going to be the key to Blake Watson being able to have success and keep going the way he has this season.
Yeah, the offensive line for Memphis, there were questions coming into this season about the offensive line, and they needed to improve, and I think that they have. The problem is over the past couple of weeks, they've been dealing with injuries. Last week against Charlotte, the entire left side of the line was different because of guys who were out. So part of it is trying to get some guys back healthy. Left guard Jonah Gamble has missed the past couple of games, and Mac Pounders, who's the left tackle, missed the Charlotte game. So they're hoping they can get those guys back, but it certainly helps when you have Blake Watson back there. He's been kind of the answer to Memphis running back questions for the past couple of years. He's been the undisputed number one guy. Like you said, maybe we'll get to 1,000 yards this weekend. Obviously, SMU's defensive line is hoping that they can hold that off for another week. But that's been a big weapon for them. And I think, like you said, that's going to be a big matchup because SMU has talent across the field. But if you're Memphis, you need to run the ball. That kind of sets everything up with Seth Hennigan in the passing game.
Let's flip over to the defensive side of the ball. Ranked 100th and 4th in total defense. What's that unit like? SMU really kind of talked up the fact that they do get off the field fairly well on third downs. They might give up a ton of yards, but they're still a good unit that can give them issues. What have you seen from this Memphis defense this season?
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that they've struggled in the past couple of weeks. They've been giving up a lot of points to teams that, Memphis would expect to go in and beat. Obviously, that's symptomatic of the whole issue, which is being in close games with teams that you would expect to beat. They did get, the takeaways have been kind of the saving grace in a couple of these games against UAB. The defense was kind of all over the place, and then they forced some takeaways, and that kind of let them control the game. And even against Charlotte last week, you give up all these points. You've got a running back who came in with one career carry, who rushes for almost 200 yards. And you force takeaways. You get a pick six and you get an interception at the end of the game to make sure it goes to overtime. And so they can kind of hang their hat on that. I think the secondary has really struggled, and that's obviously a huge concern this week with what SMU's offense can do. And it's about putting everyone in better positions. I think if you talk to coaches on the defensive side of the ball, they would say, the defensive line is not putting the linebackers in the position. The linebackers aren't putting the cornerbacks in the right position, and so on. But they have it in them. Earlier in the season, people were talking about this defense is going to anchor the team, right? And so now we're talking about shootouts every week. At the beginning of the season, it was maybe Memphis can just lean on this defense and they can kind of carry them. So they have it in them. It's just a matter of putting it all together.
How important is Chandler Martin to what they do day in, day out in that defense, and, double-digit tackles for loss? He's got 2 sacks on the season, but how important is he for that defense?
Yeah, he's huge. Obviously, he had that pick six last weekend. He's the player who, if you're just watching Memphis's defense, he's the one that you're going to notice. He's flying all over the field. He's making tackles. He's popping up. He had a huge tackle at the end of the fourth quarter to get the defense off the field, to give the offense the ball back, to get that field goal to tie the game. And that was on a third down. And he's the guy alongside Jeff Arku, who's another linebacker. I mean, they're the best players on the defense. They're the guys that are kind of powering the whole thing. And Chandler Martin is one of those guys who he's everywhere, and he's going to clean up a lot of problems that maybe shouldn't be there in the first place. But he's been just a huge player, especially, coming in as a transfer from ETSU. You might not know what you're getting in a guy like that. And he's kind of been everything that they expected and more.
And for this defense, how do you feel like overall it matches up to SMU's offense from what you've been able to see this year? I think Memphis's strength is when they've played SMU particularly well up in Memphis. They've not lost SMU in about a decade. They've been able to just out-physical them. And SMU's offensive line is kind of in the same boat. There were some questions going into the season, but they were able to kind of put together a strong middle of the season here as they've started to kind of mount up with the rushing attack and things like that. But how do you feel like Memphis's defense matches up with what all the things that SMU does offensively?
Yeah, I think it's a tough matchup, and I think everybody on this Memphis coaching staff knows that. I think, like I said, the secondary struggling obviously is a concern when you look at the caliber of SMU's offense and their quarterback. And then I think the physicality, like just everything I said about the offensive line trying to win the battle at line of scrimmage, that goes the same on the other side of the ball. And if SMU can run the ball consistently, Memphis is going to have a lot of trouble. And obviously, we're coming off a week in which, like I said, Charlotte has a running back who's maybe their fifth string guy who rushes for almost 200 yards. So if it's that kind of a performance again, it's going to be a pretty long afternoon for Memphis's defense. And I think they know that. I think you're hoping, they rise to the level of competition. They kind of go back to what they showed in those first couple of weeks of the season when it looked like, they were playing at a really high level.
They dropped their game earlier this year to Tulane. What went wrong in that game? And I mean, was there anything that really stuck out to you and said, well, when they get to some other matchups against teams of that caliber, that might come back and bite them?
Yeah, they just have to play a complete game. I mean, if you look at that Tulane game, there was a point where Memphis went on a 21-0 run, and it was in the second half, and it looked like, wow, they're just beating Tulane everywhere. And obviously, we know what Tulane did last year. We know what Tulane did this year. And there was a stretch of the game where everything was going right, and then it just wasn't anymore. And if you look at the rest of Memphis' games, even the ones that they've won, there's always a point in the game where something just doesn't go right, and it's almost like they're in a free fall. And sometimes it's the beginning of the game, sometimes it's the second half. Hopefully you get it out of the way early. But you've got to play a complete game. You've got to be consistent, and consistency has been a problem. And they know this week SMU is at that level at the top of the conference where you can't just play them for a couple quarters and then wait and hope that you survive. You've got to play the entire game, and that's what fans are kind of frustrated with, because they've seen Memphis do it in every game. They saw them do it against Missouri when Memphis was winning against Missouri in St. Louis in a hostile environment, and then the same thing kind of happened. So there's definitely positives to take from that, but also you could look at every game, including the losses and the wins, and say, this wasn't good enough across the board. And they haven't shown consistently that they can kind of put that all together.
Yeah. When I was watching some of the Charlotte game last week, and nervous SMU fans were as well. They were hoping, wow, is Charlotte going to help us out here and get this thing across the finish line? Because SMU has not won up in Memphis in a decade, like we talked about. What say you? Do you think SMU can come in and change things up a bit and beat them, or do you think Memphis has what it takes to play that complete game and tell Vegas to shove it and keep on rolling?
Yeah, I mean, I'm expecting a close game. I said that last week when we got to Charlotte, and some of the Charlotte reporters and everyone around that team was saying, oh man, this is going to be a blowout. And I said to them, I don't think you guys have watched Memphis play all year. It's always close, one way or the other. And like I said, that's true for the games where Memphis is an underdog. The game is close, even if they lose, and it's true when they're a favorite. So you look at this spread, and of course, it makes complete sense why SMU is favored. But I'm expecting a close game, just because what about Memphis season suggests that it's not going to be a close game. I think SMU has probably the more talented team, and I think we get into a shootout because every game is a shootout, obviously, and I think SMU probably edges it out. But I would expect a 1-score game that kind of goes back and forth.
Let me end with this. The conference realignment that has gone on across the country, Memphis comes out sitting in the AAC, at least as of now, and who knows when it picks back up again. But what is the feeling around this program kind of overall right now? Because they're having success. They're right in the thick of a conference championship race, but there is these changes coming where SMU is going to sneak away from this league, and Memphis is going to be left behind.
Yeah, Memphis fans are very upset. Memphis is very upset about everything going on with conference realignment, and understandably so. You can see it in how Memphis fans react to Cincinnati, Houston, and UCF, and you can see it in how they react to SMU so far this season. And I would expect that's only going to continue, especially when SMU is off in the ACC next season. And you just go back to, you can only play the team that's in front of you every week. And Memphis has gotten to this point in the season where they're in the thick of the AAC title race without having beaten, a team above 500 this entire season, which is crazy to think about. And like I said, those games haven't necessarily been easy. But the expectation, at least in this version of the conference, is that Memphis should be at this point basically every season, especially with football and especially with the resources that Memphis has versus a lot of these other programs. And I think that's extra motivation to play SMU, because it's a chance to say, okay, you guys are leaving, but we get to kind of send you out, hopefully on a negative note, right? And then this will be the last time these teams play for the foreseeable future. And so it's definitely an interesting dynamic to this game, and it'll be interesting to see how it kind of shakes out moving forward.
Yeah, kind of the same situation SMU dealt with last year playing Houston, and they were able to send them out. So we'll see how it goes. It's going to be an interesting one. I feel like we're in for at the Liberty Bowl, but 11 a.m. Central, it'll come quickly. So enjoy the game. My wife's running stats are in the commercial appeal from when she was growing up in high school. So somewhere back there in the archives, I'm sure. But Jonah, thanks so much for joining us, and enjoy the game on Saturday.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks a lot. There he is, Jonah Dylan, with the commercial appeal, stopping by to preview the game with us at the On the Pony Express podcast. Thanks for listening, guys, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to the On the Pony Express podcast with Billy Embody. Follow us on your socials on X at SMU-On3 and on Instagram at On3SMU. And keep it locked to OnThePonyExpress.com for more coverage.